I think documentation of history is so important so that we can learn from history. So are our story. When you look at the Asian hate crime, so we need to tell our story. I think we can all learn from histories.
So we kind of actually came to Wu Yi before Wu Yi became Wu Yi. So it's really come out from this idea that, it's neat. It's really basically at that time, it's after the 60s, immigration just opened up. Lots of families are rejoining, families that have been here for many, many years before. And now these young families are starting to establish roots in America. They have kids, like Catherine, and then they need help with, bringing up the children, both in childcare but also in family support, in services to help them to parent the young children. So, but when they look around, they are separated from their parents, grandparents, extended family. No one is around to really help them.
I was one of the founders for Wu Yi. So we never learned of Wu Yi. We created Wu Yi. And I must say that Wu Yi was being created at the right time, with the right location, with the right people. You're talking about the birth of Wu Yi. Why I say is that the right historical time is because of, at the time of this country, is the rise of the civil rights movement and the Asian American identity. And also there is a big push for the college-educated second generation or the first generation immigrants to return to be of service to the community. And at the same time though, there is a big influx of Chinese American families to be reunited with their grandparents for the early Chinese immigrants. And also at the end of the, you're talking about the timing of the Wu Yi, the birth of the Wu Yi. And at the same time, at the end of the Vietnam War, there is also another influx of Vietnamese refugees and also maybe even political refugees coming from Southeast Asia. Okay, so the need is there, and they're all coming in with their young families, so the need is there. And the helper is also there. Like all these college ed people are answering the calling because of the identity issues, the civil rights issue, and the women's lib issues. So we all return to the community to be the contributor or to be the empowering agent for these monolingual immigrant families.
I think we actually are really influenced by the civil rights movement, and the beginning of really social justice kind of, movement. We are so emboldened that, that as individuals, as citizens of, this new country, that we have a right to speak up what we need and also to ask the government to address our barriers. And we have as much right as the next person that's living here, and we're willing to take up the kind of like the struggle or the baton of saying, hey, we need this, and this is, part of the civil rights movement in terms of, having support, for child development, having family support, having access to health and mental health services is part of what we need to grow our families. So we're quite emboldened and enlightened, I think, by the civil rights movement.
And the other thing is the location. I think the birth of Wu Yi could not happening in the South because San Francisco, being one of the oldest Chinatown, is the big landing spot for many of the immigrants, and probably New York too. Okay, I think New York and San Francisco is the biggest locations for the birth of Wu Yi. So I would not want to take the credit so much. I think we are just the products of the right timing, right locations, and to be able to work with a great number of people who can work in harmonies and in highly cooperation.
You know, in the 70s, the government has really been more, in some sense, I call it more enlightened. They have more of an agenda of creating a better community, better society, a lot of promotion for community-based services. So it started out with a community mental health program, you know, for children and families, which came after, you know, a community mental health program for adults, you know. So we had one in Chinatown, and that's called CCDC, which is where Catherine came and used our service. We had something called a drop-in center, and along with the drop-in center, we have parent education program, and strange enough, we also have something, parent socialization program. And the parent socialization program actually is, as it turned out, more important than parent education program, because parent education is just really us, you know, mostly young professionals who kind of translate what we learn from school to, you know, tell parents and say, hey, this is what you do, and these are child development, you know, stages and all this. But the socialization group is when parents actually can sit down and talk. They were knitting, they're talking about recipe exchanging, they're talking about problem with in-laws, you know, and then also the problems with really not having enough child development support. And at that time, we do have some resource and referral services within the city, but there's no uniform kind of, you know, waiting list for child development. So parents have to go everywhere to go put up their name for waiting list, and also most of them don't speak Chinese, so they only speak English, so you can't access the service.
Miranda, I don't know if you remember, as a board member of the Association for Children's Rights and Services, we went to public hearings, and I represent the parents to the public hearings, and I have to speak in front of the public. I remember I was shaking, I was so afraid, and I had to talk and express our needs for quality childcare services, and I was shaking, but I conveyed the message. Yes. And of course, you translate for me, because at that time my English was lousy, not fluent. But we conveyed the message, and we got funding from the federal and the state. That was one of the fun activities.
I don't remember that. We were doing so many things.
Yeah, so many things, but it gave me a long time memory, because after that event, I become more assertive, and I'm no longer afraid to speak in front of the public for, you know, for the needs of the society.
You know, it's just, you know, when I look back, and I came after the association was formed, and they petitioned the legislature for money to serve the immigrant families. It is just such a heroic act for just people in the neighborhood to gather together and to assess the needs of the community and to act upon it, and then for it to be successful.
After we got funding from the government, remember we have to name our newfound childcare center. So we had a competition among the members to vote for a name that we want for the new childcare center, and I won. I named it Wu Yi Childcare Services, which means in Chinese a place for protecting children, a happy place for protecting the children.
And the other story